M&A in SEO is a topic that you won't find a lot of content about online. But it's a high stakes topic that can make or break your organic visibility. My guest today is Daphne Monro, who's head of website and content at hosting.com, where she oversees web strategy, content operations, and SEO for a global hosting network powering over 3 million sites. She lived through multiple high stakes domain migrations and rebrands and knows the ins and outs of how to make this a success. So, Daphne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to discuss this topic and share all my insights. So let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to make sure to extract as much knowledge as possible out of you. So, but let's start personal. How did you come into SEO?
So my SEO journey became in a very natural progression, I think. So I started my career agency side working on personalized emails back in Las Vegas, where I grew up. And then once I moved over to the UK, I started building websites to start something on my own and grow into the business. And obviously, once you start working on the web, you realize that SEO is kind of a foundational thing that every website needs if you want to be found. So I got really into the performance of these sites that I was working on, the user experience, and then diving into keyword research and all the other stuff that comes with the on-site, off-site. And yeah, I realized I didn't want to do anything else. I really wanted to niche down into SEO. And so I've just stuck with it and grown into it for almost the last decade now. And I love it. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Nice. And how did you end up at hosting.com, your current employer?
So I came to hosting.com about 2 years ago when we were World Host Group. So this is pre acquisition of A2 and pre-domain name purchase. So I got to be here kind of when we were building the foundations. And as the business grew through M&A, so did my role naturally. We realized there was a lot of websites through all of these new businesses that needed love and attention. So I moved into the head of website performance role, and then got really into the content side too. So now I'm head of website and content, which means I get to help build our brand tones, work with our local leaders, and really develop all of our different content strategies cross-channel, internally and externally, for all of our different brands and locales. So it's my dream job, and it's super, super cool.
But you're obviously being paid to say that. But no,
They
just
don't pay
kidding.
me to say that.
No. They hopefully just pay you a decent salary that you deserve in like your role. But I obviously introduced M&A and SEO, and you already mentioned like the history of takeover, domain name purchase, etc. So obviously the journey is very strongly connected to that. I can imagine a lot of folks either viewing or listening to this that they're not really familiar with what's involved in like M&A and SEO. So I would suggest let's start maybe with a super high level understanding of M&A and SEO. So my very stupid question is this just about buying a company and thinking about what to do with their web presence, or what's involved?
So M&A, which stands for mergers and acquisitions, only works when it's strategic. You can't just go throwing money at issues hoping to solve problems. And I think everybody in SEO knows that foundationally. Um, However, when you find a partner, for example, one of our most recent mergers with Rocket.net, you can build better businesses together and strengthen everybody at the same time. So, using that as an example, we were lacking in a high quality managed WordPress product, and Rocket.net has the best product on the market. So, through being present at events like CloudFest and just natural conversations, uh, it seemed like a no-brainer that we would make this connection and build our brands together. So having Ben Gabler move in as Chief Product Officer, he's the CEO of Rocket.net, has been a super powerful strategic move, not just for us, but also for our customers, because we're solving an issue that we know customers were complaining about. But taking it back to the SEO side, when you look at mergers and acquisitions, sometimes people think of it as a dirty word, right? Big businesses buying businesses. But it's so much more than that, and we actually strengthen each other by working together. And, some of our smaller acquisitions, early days, have been some of the most foundational team members that we have here today and have been able to grow with us. So, yeah, that's kind of my synopsis on that.
Got it. So if I understand this correctly, if we like quickly separate the M&A and then the SEO part, it's basically you see a company that would be, for example, a great addition to the group and has like a strong offering where you might not necessarily have a blind spot, but where you just feel like, hey, they're the leader there and we want to have them on the team, so to say. And then the SEO part is about how do we make sure that we like get the best synergies, or is it also buying a company that, for example, has a strong SEO presence? So you're basically buying them due to their SEO, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I mean, it's definitely part of the driving is understanding the SEO strength of their sites. And also that goes into strategically deciding whether we're going to migrate these sites into our bigger brands like hosting.com or let them be standalones like we have for Web Central, for example, because it's a leader in the Australian market that we just couldn't be at hosting.com because we don't have that authority that Web Central has built over these years and years of being a present member of the community. But when we have the discussions about which companies we're going to purchase, of course, SEO is one of the first things that we look at. What is their keyword portfolio? What is their authority, their domain ranking? Do we trust their domain? Do we want these domains pointing to other businesses that we own? Are they spammy? So we do a deep investigative dive, but also then it comes to things like the team members and the products that they offer and the educational side, what we can leverage and build together. And I like that you use synergies. I think that's a good way to summarize this.
Yeah. I think probably some people will obviously say we're just sugarcoating M&A, but I think, as you said, some topics get a bad rap. So, for example, AI search also, or the GEO also gets a bad rap for like being like just SEO in like a new, more fancy clothes. But I think
Totally.
we should talk about just the things basically behind the scenes, and like take it with a pinch of salt and not be like too biased already from the get-go. So let's maybe look at this one example you just shared where you said we couldn't just immediately integrate them into hosting.com, because this is obviously something that I could imagine a lot of people asking themselves. So I buy a company and I integrate maybe the offering into my product suite. They have built up an SEO presence under their domain. Maybe their presence was even like a positive factor in the due diligence for us. What do I do with the domain? Do I let them live on their own, or do I integrate them immediately and like redirect, etc.? So what's your take on the nuances here?
I think, like any SEO would say, it depends. Each unique situation has its own unique resolution. Um, Really just diving into more than just SEO, like it less than their keyword portfolio and more about how customers want to engage and where people are expecting to go when they interact with the brand. So Web Central, as an example, is a long-standing community present in the Australian market. So we had looked at customer feedback and customer experiences and realized that people want to, pick up the phone and have an Australian on the other end of the line. And we don't want to ruin those experiences by just buying a company and taking it over and changing everything. We deeply care about these businesses and the customers to give them the right experience that matches with their expectations. So for some people, it does mean that hosting.com is the solution, because there's a lot of earlier acquisitions that we had that are smaller brands that didn't have the infrastructure, the products, or the care that hosting.com can offer. So those ones were easy, but some of these are much more nuanced and deserve their own marketing and their own global leaders. So actually, internally in my team, we in the content department have Georgina, who leads the global marketing strategy. And then we have local leaders who lead their own locales. So, the Australian market is going to be having marketing done by Australian people. In Bangladesh, we have marketing done by people in Bangladesh, so on and so forth, so that the right people know who they're engaging with. And we don't just think that everybody's the same and everybody wants the same experience. We want to keep the authenticity that these brands have built and also empower these communities with our global infrastructure.
Makes total sense. I also recently had a guest on the podcast who talked about this, like the balance between having global strategic elements and like centralization, then also local leaders. So he leads a 30 people enterprise SEO org, and they operate like in Germany and Belgium and France. So not, I would say, culturally so different countries if you look at it from like a bird's eye perspective, because it's all Europe. But like the south of France is like very different to the north of Germany. So if I see you like operating globally and you mentioning something like Bangladesh, so how do you balance that? What are the things that you keep like globally, or like where someone owns the global perspective, and what are the things that you keep locally? Because I feel like there's no obvious answer to that.
Yeah, there's not. One thing that we do well, I think, is keeping a lot of the CEOs on board with us. So, like Ben, who I used as an example, but Imran from EY Host is one of our recent acquisitions, and he's come in and he's actually the operations leader for all of Bangladesh. So he is right there in person. You can come, the community, speak with him, and he is leading what strategic decisions we're progressing with. So things like pricing or marketing or how to content videos, we have boots on the ground. So I think that having those really senior people who have built these businesses be able to pass that knowledge on to us, and then we work together to enhance the global strategy, but also keep that local leadership present. Um, it is an ongoing challenge to give each brand and location the right experience, and sometimes we do mess up. We're humans at the end of the day, but we have back-to-back conversations with our community all the time to keep on getting better.
We will come to the hiccups a little bit later. Um, but let's take a step back again and look at whatever recent M&A project you've done. So I'd like to understand a little bit the phases of the project, because I can imagine that there are points like where you are particularly involved, and then there are aspects of it where it's maybe like an M&A team or like other teams
Mhm.
on the company. Like, give us a little bit of maybe like the timeline, the roadmap, like how is this all unfolding and where are you stepping in, and how?
Yeah, so a lot of the times the conversations happen when I'm not in the room. Um, we have a very active C-suite who engages with the community and is always looking out for opportunities for M&A, but partnerships and just ways to build and work together. Um, so often there will end up being an invite and an NDA that gets sent to me, and then I'm welcome into the conversation. And this is typically because in the hosting space specifically, M&A is very competitive. I'm sure there's lots of markets that are similar, but it's a tight-knit group of people, and a lot of these people have been working either in hosting or WordPress for the past 20 years. So you start to know everybody and go to the same events and etc. So yes, I'll get an NDA and then I'll get an invite to a meeting, and this will be when I start to do my research, and I'll look into typically, head to insert SEO tool here and dive into what their keyword portfolio looks like, what their performance is, what have they been doing over the last 5 years, and what opportunity do I see? But also, this is the point in our business where I kind of have to sell us too, because we want it to be a mutual arrangement and agreement, and we want both parties to be happy. So I also have to go back and look at all the great stuff that we've been doing and put together reports on how we've been successful in the past. And how we're going to, bring that strategy to life with this next move. So it's a lot of sitting down and talking and opportunities and nice meals, sometimes if I'm lucky. And then we get the ball rolling, and pretty much once the ink is dry on the paper, we start with the migration process.
Okay, and migration process means not necessarily old domain goes with a redirect, so to say, like we're simplifying here, goes into new domain, but migration process also involves, like, what does it involve?
Yeah, so for us, migration can be the customer migration to our customer portal, which we want all of our clients to be on, which I'm less involved in. But then from a website perspective, we like to have all of our websites on our stack. So pretty much every time there's an M&A, we are going to be migrating them to a new CMS. I don't want to necessarily plug anyone here, but I'm sure you could go to any of our sites and see that we're run on Statamic, which is great, super fast. So we do that movement, which also will probably include a content consolidation task. When you look at some of these businesses like A2, for example, we're talking 25 years of blogs. There's a lot of stuff that wasn't performing and, bloating the site. So we'll do content consolidation, CMS migration, and then put our redirects in place. And sometimes, if necessary, we'll do a rebrand. So you can look at Sou Empresa, Web Central, what else have we done? Macahost.easy. And these ones have all had rebrands post-acquisition, which has been run by George Walters, who's our creative director, who's phenomenal. And we get to get some flavor in there and make these brands sing, which is a part of the process that I really love, because we can be very technical and strategic. But once you add that flavor on top, these websites come to life, and you can see why it's important to have different brands to be in these different places in the market.
And given these like different steps across the whole project timeline, what would you say are like the, so to say, make or break points?
Whew. Timelines, I think, is a good one. So we acquired A2 hosting in January, and I found out about it in December. And then we needed to completely rebrand in April. April 28th is the day that we went live. A 25-year-old business moving to a domain name that was just parked with no authority, no nothing. So I'd say one thing that I would suggest to other businesses is allow for a little bit more time. Luckily, we have a phenomenal team, and we were successful in hitting that deadline. But it was stressful. There was a lot of sleepless nights, but it brought the team together. I think timelines is a really, really big one for make or break. And then also just like silly checklists. Like if the URLs aren't changing domains and you're keeping your URL structure, make sure that you have trailing slashes. If there's trailing slashes, check that the redirects that you had in place are still going to be in place. All of the things that can easily be forgotten. Like if you are doing a domain name migration, tell Google Search Console that you're moving your container to another container and things like that. So just taking time to do like a pre-flight checklist and actually finishing everything on that list, I think. I was really lucky to work with several agencies on this project as well. So I think in the end, we had like 3 agencies just to make sure all the SEO was as good as it could be. And then, of course, my great internal team that we have on staff. So lots of people, lots of checks, and then ideally, if possible, lots of time.
And if you reflect on that migration process, obviously time is one component, but you were like very constrained on time there. Would you still say like operationally everything went well? Were there things where you felt like if I would have to do it again, here are a couple of things that we learned that maybe we added to our playbook, so to say, that we can do better in the next migrations?
For sure. So in the case of A2, I think a lot of the conversations were, if we're going to do it perfect, we'll never launch. So I kind of liked that approach, which I struggled with personally, but I learned from that. But going back to migrations that I did learn from, Sou Empresa was one that we launched with just our core product portfolio and kind of forgot about some products that had been ranking really well just because we were looking at a list and trying to achieve a list with the new perspective. So one thing I learned from that, which was earlier on in my career here, was to definitely take the time to dive into what that brand already is before we make our moves. And if we're not offering a product in the new portfolio or for whatever reason, do we want to leave that landing page because there's lots of links back to it anyways, and put some information on there to direct users to the correct product that we currently offer, and just leveraging that existing authority? That was definitely one of the early learnings before, thank goodness, before we had the big ones.
Hmm. And if you recap on migration projects where you basically did not or discontinue the old domain and moved everything over to the new one. So I'm not sure if this has happened now after you moved to hosting.com already. Um, but I'm wondering, like, is this basically a net new increase then in traffic and in visibility, etc.? So if I'm thinking like the domain I'm buying, they're getting, I know traffic is vanity, but for the sake of my example, they're getting like 50,000 clicks from Google a month. So, and then you're moving it over. Probably most people would love to see those 50,000 clicks just coming on top
Yeah.
on what I already have. But is this the case? Like, can you do a simple calculation like that?
So obviously you need to keep in mind that Google's going to catch up with you, or wherever you are, it's going to catch up with you, even if you're doing some quick wins. So as long as you're purchasing a domain that's within your topic, um, and you're not just migrating it over to a landing page that has no relationship with the information that you're sharing, I think that is a quick win that can have long-term advantage. I don't think you're going to keep your 50,000 clicks. If you're going to migrate all of that existing content that was on that domain name that you've purchased onto this guy over here that you're building, and then properly redirect, then I think there's a case that you can keep those 50,000 clicks. And I think that we can see in the market, people are picking up on this and building businesses this way for sure. It's often about keeping the authority, though, and making sure that you have the right content on the end that still matches customer intent, which is just foundational SEO strategy. So we're kind of entering a world where I'm considering it a bit more of black hat SEO strategies coming back with the rise of AI and all these cheeky ways that you can get yourself in, like AI overviews, for example. I would still never want to push those strategies, even though you can win right now, and always think about the long-term benefits and think about the sentiment that you want to resonate with your community and your customers. Hey, if you want to buy that domain for 50K clicks, go and buy it and test it out and let me know how it goes.
Got it. So please, people, comment if you have experience on that, or if you're going to do an experiment.
For
Um,
sure.
Tapping into the other scenario, if you keep the domain as is and like let the brand live on its own, so to say, like obviously connected in the backend, etc. But is there anything you're doing in terms of strengthening each other, like doing content collabs, or like does it make sense to set links from hosting.com to like the other side, something like that?
It's good. It's a really good question, and it's something that we talk about a lot, actually. So we haven't actually done it yet because I keep feeling that I should test it. I should just test it. But I don't know if I wanna be sending links to all of these different brands and not letting them just perform in their own, because the whole philosophy is that they should be standalone brands. And if we need that network to strengthen them, maybe that's a sign that they don't need to exist on their own. That's just something that pops in my head when I dive into that scenario. So we haven't. There's definitely different brand owners and people who have come to me and said, "Hey, can we please get a hosting.com link?" And I'm always like, I don't know, because I'm very
Mm.
precious, and I want hosting.com to remain, the number one in the hosting space, which I'm sure it will. So I don't know. Watch the space. Maybe I'll let you know if I do, and we can put an update on, because maybe it is time to just test it.
Awesome. Maybe another use case I was thinking of, where just would like to know if you've already done something like that, or like if not, what's your take on that? So I could see maybe hosting.com and one of the brands you purchase or purchased. Um, like let's say, for example, for whatever query that feels relevant and important to you. Unfortunately, hosting.com is not yet like in the top spots, but maybe like somewhere in the upper middle, let's say. So we are talking now classic Google rankings. I know it's much
Mhm.
more nuanced, but for the sake of the example, let's say hosting.com is like spots 3 or 4. And then also in the top 10, you have like the other domain, like the other brand that is obviously part of the
Yeah.
company group now. They're like then with their own landing page or article, whatever, on position 7 or 8. Would you consider then, for example, cutting the page from like the other domain that is not hosting.com, and then redirecting from that to the hosting domain, hosting.com page, to like strengthen this one? Because in the end, it's better to be like number 1 than just be like number 3 and number 7.
So again, typical SEO answer. It depends. If it's one of our local brands, like our local leaders, then I would leave it and let it exist in its own right, because Google will have different rankings for different locations, and I still want that brand to be big and loud for people in India. For example, with Hosting Raja, like people in India will want that Hosting Raja brand in some instances because it's run by Manny, who is physically in India and has his team in India, who are all fantastic, by the way. Or, I don't want to take that away from those people who are looking for that. But if it's a really small brand, like, gosh, we have quite a few floating around. And I don't want to necessarily name any of them as small ones, but there's some littler brands floating around in time and space that are not getting the love that they deserve from us. And from a business perspective, aren't bringing in the revenue to warrant that time. Therefore, absolutely, I'm like, cut, redirect, send that juice over to hosting.com, because yeah, I mean, we are
Mm-hmm.
one family, but there is a priority in a pecking order. We definitely want that order to be hosting.com and local leaders being level, and then, everything else falls in line.
Mm. You mentioned the term local leaders already, and you obviously have like a wide-ranging net of domains and companies in the group. And I saw that you recently launched in Bangladesh, which I found super interesting because honestly, I don't know enough about Bangladesh. I should educate myself more about that. So this is something that I always find super interesting. If people are operating like in these regions. And now I'm wondering, because you were also physically there, and you also obviously played a role in the whole launch and everything. Like, how difficult is it for you to lead such a new market that I would, maybe it's a wrong premise, that I would consider also quite different culturally and language wise.
No,
So
you are
like what?
absolutely correct. That was what my speech was all about when we were in Bangladesh. And I think I started it by saying, you don't want an American woman to stand here and tell you how to run your business in Bangladesh, right? That's not what people are looking for. But that's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to take a brand like hosting.com, translate everything, and just say, "Oh, we've launched in Bangladesh." That's not launching, that's not building community, that's not building trust. What we are there to do is leverage the incredible team that we have there and let them lead us. So Imran, who I've spoken about today already, who was founder and CEO of UI Host, is the business that we acquired and the reason that we went and did this big launch event in Bangladesh. But also, we had some team members there already who have been with hosting.com longer than me. For example, Pfizer. And in my team, I have Assad and Zayed. So these are content creators in the local community who tell me, "Hey, Daphne, we're not going to say it like this. The community is not going to engage well," or we're going to actually physically phone call people instead of sending out emails because that's how our community prefers to be spoken to. Or, people are going to want to barter uh, for hosting prices, and we got to give them the opportunity to barter. So different things like this. There's no way that I could come into this community and know that without having these important conversations, and also by physically being there and standing in these rooms and having these Q&As. I think we had about 800 attendees, which were existing customers, the tech minister, and loads and loads of founders. Women of WordPress Bangladesh was there, and we put the mic out on the floor and we let people ask us the tough questions in real time. And off the back of that, we change our content strategy, or we go and look at our pricing because we actually want to be local. We don't just want to bring big business to Bangladesh.
Mm. But you still have to lead the team in a way.
Of
So
course.
do you mainly lead it? So obviously it makes total sense to have people like basically do upwards management and like also make clear what's the mutual goal, and then um like so make them, or like help them have the autonomy to make these calls and like guide you in that sense. But do you mainly then, for example, just look at like quantifiable data stuff, so in terms of how we're doing ranking wise, how we're doing AI visibility wise, whatever is like concerned in that sense? Because I mean, it would also be like not really helpful to go to pages and then have Google translate from like Bangladeshi to English, because it's obviously lacking a lot of nuance. So how are you handling this operationally?
So my job is to be the voice between these local leaders and then, of course, the C-suite and the board, which ultimately our decision making has to be profitable decision making, and we do need to hit KPIs, and we do have metrics that we need, and that does tend to drive the priority order of which location we're looking in, and what content we will be creating. The good thing is that we have a very similar product portfolio across all brands, and we have a very large and talented team who get to have their voices heard. But yeah, sometimes, unfortunately, we do have to shut down ideas and progress with the things that are going to drive results, because at the end of the day, we are still a business. And I think that's the part of M&A that gets heard the most, is that it's just big business. And I do get it, because yeah, we are corporate, of course we are, but we do absolutely give autonomy in the platform for different people to educate and share. And the content creation in 2026, driven by trust and authority, I mean, strategically, from a business perspective, makes sense to be led by people who know these people and places the best.
I think it's super interesting because I also know a couple of people that are working in leadership for sometimes German companies that have
Hmm.
like expanded in Europe and other places, and they have similar challenges. So it's definitely something where I feel like it's just like it's part of the process. So I would never judge M&A based on just being like we have to acquire a company. I mean, in the end, it's two hopefully adult people that agree that we will engage in a deal. Um, but how do you ensure, because I mean, autonomy and letting the local leaders do their thing, like, I mean this positively, um, is so it makes total sense. But how do you ensure that like the knowledge travels, like literally travels across the globe, like things that are maybe like working well in Bangladesh that could also be helpful and like inspiring to a business in, I don't know if you have another fancy country where you're operating. I don't know, like let's say just the US. So to be
Yeah,
a
for sure. I
little
mean, the US is
conservative
our
here.
largest market, of course. And obviously, the stuff that works in the US is going to work 90% of the time everywhere else, because uh, we all want to access our products in a way that's just simple, right? Like, we don't
Yeah.
need to make things super complicated all the time. But there's also something simple, like I had to learn how to say Bangladesh. They, like, you pronounce it Bangladesh, but everybody, as an American, you're going to come in and be like Bangladesh. It's just those
Mm,
nuances and being able to speak to people correctly, that is where I really get that support. But my content team are also hosting experts, WordPress, like pioneers. So people who already know the space and the products and want to make that content easily digestible. And that is, simply put, just 90% of the time what we're going to put out everywhere anyways. But for that other 10% of the time, we have those voices internally, and we are going to stop and listen to them.
mm. Let's quickly talk about team, because I think also people listening or watching that are in a leadership position themselves, they obviously have to decide on hiring and decide on the perfect candidate profiles. And what is it that you're looking at, like in terms of what people have as attitude or skill set, whatever, that you need to work in such a truly global business? Because I could imagine that it's different to work in a company that is solely operating like domestic US versus US, Bangladesh, other countries, obviously in connection to the local leaders, but still, like you have to work with this like global perspective all the time.
For sure. And hosting.com is not for everyone. And I will just start by saying that we are at almost 1,000 people big, but we still operate as a startup. And like, our core is built on like hustle culture. Like, I am still doing things I was doing as an SEO associate, because when the job needs to get done, you do the job. Um, and that's kind of, I know some people in their career don't want to work like that, and that's totally fine. But we're looking for people who get up out of bed and go, "Wow, I am part of this phenomenal global brand. I get to empower people all over the world." And sometimes that means I have 5 a.m. meetings. Sometimes that means I have 8 p.m. meetings, because I have to be here for my team who is everywhere. But I love that. I love that I get to speak to all these different people and share and grow in a way and actually physically be present in places that I may have never been able to go myself. For example, going to India last year, I went with the CEO, just me and the CEO, to India to go and meet our team. And it changed my life. It was just such a phenomenal experience. But you will get there with hard work and, sometimes giving up your Sundays and hustling and building quickly and breaking things and then finding out how to fix it in post. Um, it's not for perfectionists, but it's for people who are passionate. And that's what I would say about hosting.com culture for sure.
Nice. Agree. A personal note on that one. I once had the honor to host a webinar with Arabs, the like AEO platform from the US, and it was scheduled for Friday, and I think like based on Eastern time or like I don't know, like one of the time zones in the US at like 12 a.m. And we were writing back and forth. And I didn't realize that it was starting only at 6 p.m. On a Friday, my time. Now, you could say like no issue at all, but I bet you there are a lot of people that would say, yeah, hosting a webinar like with a Q&A at the end at 6 p.m. on a Friday, like I want to be off for the weekend by 5 p.m. You
Yeah.
bet. So, and this is so I just want to give a +1 on that one. If you want to make things happen, sometimes you just have to go the extra mile, especially if you're working with people in like different countries and like
Yeah.
strongly different time zones.
And I will just add on to that everybody in our team does do it. And I want to give a shout out quickly to Corey Miller, who runs our agency success program, and so much more, our community leader. His title is actually Chief Evangelist. When he joined, he was part of the A2 acquisition. He joined and that man was on calls at like 4 a.m. because he didn't want to miss a thing. He was like so excited. Nobody was telling him to be there. He just was there, and that energy and being surrounded with people who are so excited to be here is awesome. Cause it is, I mean, with a name like hosting.com, I mean, why would you want to be anywhere else?
Yeah,
It's like,
100%.
it feels like Google. Like, I'm not going to lie. That's how I feel.
Nice. We have this in the transcript, so AI search will be able to use this in the sentiment when people ask like AI mode. So how is it working at hosting.com? And then I hope that this video will be part of the citations, and then it says hosting.com is like working at Google. This would be nice. Cool. Another topic I would like to talk to you about is I would say, mainly talked about M&A SEO in the sense of acquiring a business where there's also like a huge importance in the product of the business. So,
Hmm.
like as you said, WordPress hosting specialists, and they're the best at what they're doing, like Rocket.com. We want to like have them on the team, so to say. But then there were also two occasions in the SEO space, even where obviously it's also maybe somehow about product, but I would say it's more about like media.
Hmm.
The first was 2022, where Semrush acquired Backlinko.com. And the second one was, I just quickly looked up again, last year actually, where Ahrefs acquired detailed.com and the accompanying SEO extension. So have you somehow followed or like heard anything about these acquisitions?
Yeah. I mean, just bringing up SEMrush right now is making me think that I believe Adobe just recently acquired them.
Yeah.
Um, so like acquisitions are happening all around us, right? But going back to the content perspective and acquiring s- for education and just like great content that's been built over time in your niche. I think that strategically makes so much sense. And I don't think hosting.com is in the business of doing that ourselves, just because we we are building our own content hub off of the back of the hosting experts that we have internally, and kind of leveraging those authoritative speakers themselves to align with EEAT and all that jazz, because we have full ownership of it. But for other businesses, I can absolutely understand why you would do an acquisition like this. I do think it's kind of funny, just going back to the Adobe acquisition, with Ahrefs having acquired as well, because I've loved their marketing campaigns about Adobe acquiring Semrush. I don't know if you've seen it, but take a look. It's fun marketing material pieces.
Yeah, let's see how it goes with Adobe and Semrush. If Adobe will let Semrush live on their own. Do you have a take on that? It's a super
Oh,
interesting topic. I wanted to get someone that is ex Semrush on the podcast to discuss like what do you think, like how will this go? They declined, unfortunately, but like
well,
you're free to speak about it.
yeah,
So
I'm not affiliated,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I am experienced, obviously, in mergers and acquisition, and I will say that there's always change. There's always lots of new people who are gonna make new decisions, and in all cases, and this is kind of why M&A gets a bad rep, is because they're for better or for worse. And sometimes, like looking in the hosting sphere, EIG is known as kind of the enemy of the world, because they went and bought lots of hosting companies and really diminished the support, raised the prices incredibly. And sometimes hosting.com gets compared to EIG online. We are not EIG. And I can tell you, you can hop on a phone call right now with our CEO, who wants to put time in with the customers and work on building products and brands that are right for our users. Do I know if Adobe is going to have that kind of passion for Semrush? I don't know. I don't think it's a normal thing in the M&A space to have, but I can say full-heartedly that our team does. And it's been
Hmm.
very cool, and it's shifted my perspective on everything. So who knows, maybe they will, and it'll be phenomenal. Watch this space, I guess.
Hmm. But do you think, for example, maybe quickly drawing back on the Semrush Backlinko acquisition, do you think it's then a buy or build thing and you decide to just build it? Like Semrush decided to just buy the educational content platform, so to
For
say.
sure.
I think they still operated. They also still operated separately. So it's still backlinko.com, but like
Huh.
the cookie
I
banner is
like,
the same as on Semrush. And it's like, it has a lot of integrations, like where it says, um, like find the best keywords and try Semrush for free, etc. But
yeah. I guess the buy or build perspective
Mhm.
definitely makes sense, because if you have the opportunity to acquire a large voice in your community and strategically angle it in a positive light for yourself as a business, I mean, that makes sense. It's a quick win, and probably a long lasting one. I mean, I'm just going to do a quick peek at the domain ranking on Backlinko and just see what we're working with. But if it was driving great value, as a resource, I mean, it makes sense to put yourself in there in a positive light, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they also, I think it's interesting because if you just check like a content piece, for example, on Backlinko, which is like link building for SEO, and then you just scroll down so you don't, like there is a little pop-up at the top, at least on the desktop, like use
Mhm.
SEMrush to check my site's SEO. But then what I find even more interesting and like more subtle is that they then use screenshots from the SEMrush product to make certain points, like how you do a backlink analysis, etc. And this feels smart to me. Um,
Totally.
Drawing on that, are you familiar with the kanji now called Iru, the sequence
I
content
am not.
brand thingy? No, okay. Let me give you. Let me try to summarize it
Yeah.
really, really shortly, and then I'm interested to hear your perspective. And maybe it's something that is also something that that could be interesting to consider in future acquisitions. So the previous CMO at Kanji, now they're called Iru. It's like a mobile device management kind of software. So like managing Apple devices, I think.
Mhm.
She did a post. So her name is Sylvia something. Like it's a little bit complicated name. I can't remember. She posted that they have launched a what she called content brand, which is called thesequence.com, I think, and where they basically post content about this whole mobile device management topic, and then they just like integrate Kanji, now Iru, into the whole, like, not only educating, but then what is a good software to help you do that.
Yeah.
And what they noticed is that in terms of classic SEO metrics, it like didn't really do anything. So not a lot of traffic, not a lot of rankings, but they were cited a lot in AI
Yep.
search, and it helped them basically have, alongside their own content and maybe alongside Reddit, etc., just another domain that basically acted as a support in ensuring that your brand is part of the AI answer. So
For sure. Um, like I kind of nodded to earlier in our conversation, like, I do feel like we're back in the black hat SEO sphere where we're
do you
we're
feel like it's
finding
black
these.
hat?
I kinda do a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
Okay. Okay.
gray. It's that middle ground, right? Where I think you're kinda trying to cheat the system, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's gonna have that long-term value, that trust and authenticity, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm worried about being quoted on this. Maybe black hat's a step too far. Um,
But
but
do
I
you feel
do.
like? Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no.
Do you feel like then Backlinko? So, for example, if I look at Backlinko and I have like it's obviously like the site was already established, so it's a little bit a different timeline here. But when I look at the link building for SEO article, here's just randomly. If I search on the article, if I search for Ahrefs, if I search for Surfer SEO, if I search for um like Systrix, it's not mentioned at all.
Yeah.
If I search for Semrush, it's mentioned 9 times. And also, like, just in the content, just casually, like, build on it by pulling competitor backlink reports using Semrush's backlink analytics tool. Like, it's just
Yeah.
part of the answer. So, would you also consider this gray hat?
I think it's strategic. It's definitely strategic.
Strategic. Nice. It's not gray hat, it's strategic.
It's 100% strategy in action. I do think that just with the evolution of
Mm,
Google and crawling and people wanting the most trustworthy sources, we will start to get a better look into who owns what when we're
mm-hmm,
asking these questions in the future. I think when we look at any brand or business and you start to look at how many people actually own these businesses in any sense of products in the
mm-hmm,
world, people are always shocked. There's a few big guys. So I think having that transparency and trust is where people will shine in the future as opposed to just shoving your name on every single thing. Instead of you getting rewarded for just being great.
Okay, so, but then in your perspective, it's not just about doing this, like having this portal, but it's about the disclosure. Like, am I making it transparent to the reader or the
100%.
customer that this is like Backlinko is part of the Semrush company?
I do think that is and at hosting.com, that's our mission is to be the world's most trusted hosting company. You'll hear every single person say that, because
Mm,
trust online is hard to find. And we want to be clear and transparent. We do post on our like status updates when we're wrong, and we apologize to our customers, and we take ownership. And I think that is what people are looking for. And I think especially with the rise of AI and all of the changes online, that's what's really going to let companies shine in the future.
hmm But if I would now start like an educational platform where I share a lot of knowledge about hosting and like WordPress and stuff, and you would maybe see, for example, this platform being showing up consistently as citations on prompts or like query searches that are meaningful to you. And like I'm not mentioning any provider, for example, so it's just based on like the actual stuff I'm doing, like tutorials, how-tos, etc.
hmm
Would this be something that you feel like you could consider in the future, like doing partnerships with them? Maybe not even buying the whole thing, but affiliate partnerships, for example?
100%. And we
Mm.
do that already, like with different plugins for WordPress or um, conferences and events. But we do want to clearly be like, we are sponsors. Like we are hosting.com and we're choosing to
Mhm.
put our money here because we want to invest in the community as opposed to
Mhm.
being a little bit sneaky, which I'm not shaming. I think
Mhm.
that it is strategic and obviously going to bring value. And at the end of the day, we are all businesses and we got to make money to pay our bills and keep roofs over our heads. So if it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. Okay. So then I will be clear on that. If anyone from Backlinko listens to this, guys,
I know.
get your stuff together and be more transparent in disclosing that you're paid by Semrush. Like this is Daphne said it is strategic. I would say it's questionable. So and we know what you're doing there. Like we get
Yeah.
it. Cool. Okay. Um I have two more questions. Actually, um the first one is I try to always make, so I feel like this part we could go into even more detail here, but it was already a lot of fun. So I tried to make the podcast insightful, entertaining. I think insights we checked, entertaining also, like I felt entertained, and I also tried to make it actionable. So I always like to I like for people to go away with like a couple of like practical takeaways. So if you were advising a company either starting or going through an M&A process right now, or maybe considering, like they maybe have a target and they are not sure about the whole SEO aspect, like will this work out, etc. What would be your 2 to 3 top pieces of advice for them?
So my first piece of advice is keep in mind the existing customers. That business is successful and you're interested because they're already doing something great. I think that's one thing that gets missed in a lot of M&A. So keep those customers top of mind during this experience. And then number 2, make sure your migration strategy is rock solid. Make sure that you're doing things because it makes sense for the users. CMS migrations, product portfolio changes, content consolidations. I mean, really take the time to dive into all of that on your site and their site and make the moves only where it makes sense. That's what
Makes
I
sense.
got.
Yeah, that's good. I have a final surprise question,
Oh.
which is I bluntly stole this from Lenny's podcast, which is what didn't we talk about that we should have talked about?
Oh, gosh, I feel like we covered so much
That
exciting
came
stuff today.
unexpected.
Um, I think I would have liked to discuss more just about my amazing team. I mean, I would have liked to like I could spend an hour talking about each one of them. There's 17 of them currently, so it would be a long discussion. Um, but it really is the people behind the scenes. Very public. I'm loud. But I can only do everything that I do every single day because of the team that I work with. And yeah, around me, above me, like, I'm just covered with successful people, and it's just very exciting.
But don't you feel like, so obviously massive shout out to everybody on the team, and hopefully they will like and subscribe this episode and like leave a comment on whichever platform. I think this should be the minimum engagement here. But don't you think also that there are people on the team, because you said you're like out there loud, there are people on the team that appreciate just being like heads down on the work and not have to like
For
have
sure.
to in
I
quotes
I already have
on a
names
podcast?
popping in my head.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, but we have people who are amazing at what they do. Like, we have content writers who are fantastic technical writers who definitely don't wanna be spending their time on a podcast, and I would never ask that of them.
Yeah. But guys, it's super fun. So
It
maybe
is
you
so
should
fun,
reconsider
especially when
whoever
I hang out
Daphne
with
has in
you.
mind. Yeah, whoever Daphne has in mind. I don't know, obviously, but maybe you should reconsider. So Daphne, we have crossed the hour mark. It has been an insanely, so now I can check all three boxes: insightful, entertaining, and actionable conversation. I can't thank you enough for sharing so much, also behind the scenes, also like your how you think about stuff. I think it's always massively helpful not just to get an answer like do this, do that, we did that, but also understand like how you're coming to conclusions, etc. So massive thanks to that. Um, if people want to follow you around more, or if they want to follow hosting.com, or maybe even, I don't know, if you're hiring or if hosting.com has job openings, what's the best place to follow and to check it out?
The best place for sure is LinkedIn. We post all of our job openings, company updates, webinars, all on LinkedIn all the time, hosting.com, quite easy to find. And yeah, check out our site as well, hosting.com. And
Awesome.
I just want to say also thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun and just a really great opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, I have to say, like hosting.com, this domain name is, I think, so obviously I'm spending a lot of time like with domains and Semrush, etc. I think it's like superb. Like it's so on point. It's so simple. It's really straightforward. You can't get this wrong. So if I see people like spelling their domain names and like, yeah, but then there's like, then there's like an underscore, like it's not an underscore, but
Yeah. And
it's like,
I know we're out of time, but that's also a very fun discussion because I was here before we bought it, so I got to do the research and put together the case study, the business report for the benefits of buying a domain name with no authority. So,
yeah, it's
um,
like, yeah, that's a
so
that's a topic for another day. But
it
I
is,
mean,
but I
back in
will.
the
I have to
days,
add one more thing
yeah,
that Seb.
of course, let's do it.
Um, he did a video. Seb's our CEO in Bangladesh, and it's just him explaining like why we spent millions on a domain. And I checked that out. That's on our LinkedIn as well.
Okay, I have one really final question. Like, did you disclose what you paid for the domain?
I don't believe we've disclosed the number,
Okay,
but I
but
can say
it's a
it was
lot.
millions.
Okay, and can you say or maybe like describe who you bought it from? Like, was it another company? Was it like a random guy that purchased it like at the beginning of the internet?
You're asking the wrong person, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I had more context to who it came from, but just knowing the guys, it's probably like somebody who started their business when they were 13 with servers
Okay.
in their bedroom or something like.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what
Mm-hmm.
the community is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure I can find out and come back another time if you'll have me.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a story where somebody like bought a Bitcoin like ages ago and like didn't even know what it was, and then suddenly someone knocks on the door and tells you, "Hey, this is worth millions." But
Yeah.
yeah, that's only the stories the internet writes. So cool that we were able to tap into some of them. Um, Thanks so much for today, guys. Gals, go follow Daphne, go follow hosting.com if you need a good hosting provider. I'm not getting paid to say any of this. I just generally think the offer looks very solid. We'll put a link in the description below or show notes or wherever you are and watching, listening to this. So go check it out. And then, Daphne, thanks so much for coming on and all the best to you and your whole team and the whole company.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.